Welcome to episode 88 of Rebirth Revolution. My name is Melissa Olson. It's entirely possible that stores like Target have ruined us. If you need a t-shirt, shampoo, tortillas, and a candle, we can go to Target to get them all. They have most, if not all, of what we need. We think we should be able to get everything in one spot, and it is messing with our minds. In an effort to make a complicated life more simple, we are drawn to finding our answers in one or two places. But that is not how this game works. Your answers are constantly being revealed to you from many different sources. That flies in the face of our desire for one-stop shopping. People who fall into cults can do so from a good place in themselves that heard a couple of spiritual truths that pinged for them. Instead of taking those two truths and working them into their own belief system, they decided that the cult leaders knew all the truths, which they clearly did not. The participants handed over their free will and the rest of their legitimate search for answers to a handful of people who did not have their best interests at heart. And most of the growth they experienced didn't count because it wasn't chosen freely. It's actually kind of lazy. When we are children, we think our parents know everything. Every child at some point has to come to the realization that their parents know some of the answers, but not all of them. Some children have to come to the realization that their parents knew few, if any, of the answers. The rest of the answers are theirs to discover and share to the best of their ability. We are all here for the adventure of finding the answers. There would be no reason for us to exist if there was anyone in our midst who actually knew it all. There is no one person who understands it all. That would be impossible because no one can fully understand what they have not experienced. The sooner each and every person comes to terms with the fact that they do not possess all the answers, the happier they will be. This realization will also put their own search, the reason they are here, into a whole new gear. Not only do we not have all the answers, questions continue to change because of our collective growth. The old answers no longer fit the new questions. Our collective culture continues to shift and morph because there are things that we are figuring out, people and concepts that are newly being accepted, and there are choices we are making that will change the trajectory for us all. In our culture, we now have people who are deemed to be influencers. They have some specific knowledge that makes them worthy of following and possibly emulating. They teach, they entertain, they provoke. Their title is bestowed by those who find their content interesting. It's a cool and democratic way of sharing information. But you may not want to get your education about race relations from someone who is an influencer because they do an effortless top knot or a seemingly impossible eyeliner application. Someone who is famous for outrageousness and pratfalls should not be tapped to be your spiritual guru. A man who is a great musician may not be the best person you go to if you want to understand the plight of women. A failed game show host should not be your go-to for deep political understanding and the preservation of democracy. I'm not saying that any of these influencers cannot work outside of their original subject matter. I'm just saying that you need to understand what you are taking from that person's knowledge and you need to know when to move on. Move on without being mad about it. It's ridiculous to act as though each and every person who has something to share should know everything and should give it all to you. It's only dangerous that they don't know everything if you choose to act as if they do. It's never about what others are putting out in the world as much as it is about your own personal receptors. And your receptors are your responsibility. Each and every person, regardless of their line of work, is on the same hunt for puzzle pieces. Some have found many, some have found few. We are all working at different levels on different issues. As you rise to higher levels of spiritual awareness, you have a keener spidey sense about what is useful and what is garbage. Some of this wisdom is learned the hard way, and other parts from understanding and detecting the tools and agendas of those who still inhabit the lower levels of spiritual awareness. The height of ridiculousness is to look at those who had something to share many years ago and judge what they knew then against what we know now. I love old Doris Day movies. I can't even explain why. I feel like she was always a somewhat edgy character in her movies for the time that she inhabited. She always had an ease with sticking up for herself, which was somewhat unusual at the time. She wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty. She always played characters who fully inhabited their space and their body. But by today's standards, people could be offended by the most benign of her movies, like Pillow Talk. In this movie, a college-age boy is giving her a ride home from his mother's party. He pulls off to the side of the road and straight up attempts to sexually assault her. She has to fight like crazy to get him to stop. When the skirmish is over, she just rolls her eyes and agrees to go out for a drink with him. It was treated as though it was a normal circumstance for a woman to find herself in, nothing unusually menacing. It was normal and to be expected. This is what men did. Later, the man who she had considered to be a cad broke into her apartment and dragged her out of bed, kidnapping her, and took her to his apartment. The look on her face went quickly from terror to ecstasy. She was thrilled when he declared that he was driven to this by the recognition that he now wanted to marry her. Bingo! She won the prize. It may all seem silly or even dangerous, but there are still people walking this earth who lived when these were perfectly normal life events. You couldn't make a movie where these events occurred in today's world and have them strike a comic tone like they did then. But that is how the world has changed. In old movies, you can see casual violence and every type of ism that would send up red flags today. Should we take our cues for gender relations from a Doris Day Rock Hudson movie? Of course not. Should we castigate the person who wrote the script or directed the movie for not being enlightened about the relationship between the different characters in this movie from 1959? That would be insane. That is how people saw it back in 1959. The takeaway, in addition to delightful fun, is that we are moving forward. We're moving toward a fairer society than the one our parents and grandparents lived in. It's not wrong to enjoy movies about how things used to be. Trying to attach blame and shame to things thought and done when people didn't know better does not help move the needle. This is a tricky dance that we are doing. We can pick the scab on some of the less important things that were said and done in the past, because they are easy to process. At the same time, we actively attempt to avoid the much bigger scabs, like the Tulsa Race Massacre. It is important that we realize that what happened in Tulsa was not a single occurrence. These types of things happened all over the place. So many parts of our history are horrifying. I would imagine the attempts to cover up events like Tulsa are powerful because if the full truth comes out, there are many people who will have to look at their ancestors in a very different light, a very dark light. None of us want to think that our people were capable of being monstrous. If we don't look backwards and wince, we aren't growing. This is true both on the individual and collective levels. If you want to dig into some fresh thinking about gender relations, then look to someone who has a vision of how we can move forward. Listen to them and see if anything pings for you. If not, listen to another and another until something pings. If you want to dig into some fresh perspectives on race relations, then look to someone who carries the generational wounds of our past and let it rearrange your molecules. Connect to their wounds and understand the heavy weight of oppression that they have carried. That is the way to help find the ways forward to a world that is more just and equal. You have this amazing gift of intuition, which is the thread that connects you directly to your Creator. It is your job to honor that gift by using it, refining it, and making it the centerpiece of your personal growth and spiritual progression. There are some people who want to be cult leaders. Others are granted that status without ever requesting it. Think back to high school. There was probably someone who was good at sports, or maybe even classically beautiful. Cool, but that doesn't mean that they knew anything deeper or meaningful than that. Nor does it mean that they wanted to be held up as some sort of standard. Somehow the other kids, and this has gone on since the beginning of time, want to allow that kid to determine the value of every other kid. They were saddled with the expectation that they knew everything, that their opinions held more weight than the opinions of others. That is an enormous weight that no young person is capable of handling properly. Spoiler alert, everyone in high school is scared and insecure and struggling to figure it all out. Just the same as in junior high, or I guess they call that middle school now. It's also the same in adult life. No one ever feels that they have it all figured out unless they are some sort of psychopath. Bullies want to be influencers. They want, through sheer force and pathological lack of empathy, to influence how you feel about yourself and or someone else. If the person with the loudest voice knew the most, or the one that could slug the hardest had the best ideas, you might have something there. But they don't. Bullies are people who are working at the lowest spiritual awareness levels. They are testing out a theory of what might make them feel less small and powerless. They must redirect attention to someone else so no one sees how limited, pitiful, and insecure they are. The last thing people at the lower levels of awareness need is power. They cannot possibly use it for good. It just isn't in their capabilities. You don't give a toddler a sharp knife or the keys to your car. Why on earth does anyone care what they think? Why does anyone become their audience when they do what they do? If everyone were to turn their backs on bullies, either physically or unfollowing, unfriending, and blocking online, they would lose the payoff they receive and would have to find another way to become relevant. But this means everyone must do so, even the people who are not currently the target of the bullying. A good old-fashioned shunning will get anyone's attention. The one thing I have found bullies to be good at is spotting talent. They always seem to target the people who have something special going on, something that the bully will never personally possess. You are much better off betting on the target of a bully than on the bully himself. So once we sort out the psychopaths, the cult leaders, and the bullies, what do we have? We have people who have figured something out, have honed a skill, have perfected a recipe. All of that can enhance our life and make the time here in this school more pleasurable. But you need to be the person who picks and chooses the input that comes in. You have to sort out who knows something that you can work into your current level of awareness. You need to sort out the gold nuggets from the piles of sand. You need to bring what you know to the process and then weave the threads of beauty and wisdom into the tapestry of life that best reflects you in this moment. And when this moment is over, you need to be ready to weave in entirely new threads that better reflect your vision. This process never ends, which is great news. You have the ultimate creative project ahead of you. It is your life. It is your thinking and understanding. It is the landscape of your feelings and connections. It may be hard here in this school, but it is never boring. Thanks for listening to Rebirth Revolution. Pick it apart and find what works in your tapestry. If none of it works, I will not be offended. Keep looking. You are always welcome to let me know what you think. Email me at rebirthrev@gmail.com. If you could follow, comment, and rate this podcast, others will have an easier time finding it. Until next week, stop single sourcing your wisdom. Tune in to your intuition, get vaccinated if possible, and watch a Doris Day movie whenever possible. Remember, you are loved exactly as much as every other person on the planet, not 1 ounce more or 1 ounce less. Stay strong and safe, and keep your ear to the ground.